Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai.
Jai.
Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada.
Hare Bol. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please,
Right.
my humble obeisances are glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Hare Krishna, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today we continue our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the third canto, the 12th chapter, and today we are finishing the 12th chapter, so we are going to go from verse 50 through 57. So we'll chant verse 50, and then we'll continue through. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Rishinam Bhuri Viryanam Apisargam Avistritam Natva Tad Dridhaye Bhuyash Chintayam Asakorava. Rishinam Bhuri Viryanam Api Sargam Avistritam Knatva Tat Dridyate Bhuyash Chintayam Asakaurava. Rishinam Bhuri Viryanam Api Sargam Avistritam Knatva Tadridyate Bhuyash Chintayam Asakaurava. Please chant.
Rishinam Bhuri Viryanam Apisargam Avistritam Jnatva Tad Dridhyate Bhuyas Chintayam Asakaurava. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please. Abhiryanam api sargam avistatam yadbhata dhiradaye bhuyas chintayam asakaurava. Krishna.
Rishinam bhuri viryanam api sargam avistritam jnatva tadridaye bhuyas chintayam asakaurava.
Hare Krishna. Rishinam Bhuri Viryanam Api Sargam Avistritam Gyatva Tadadridhe Bhuyas Chintayam Asakorava. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Okay. Rishinam of the great sages. Puri Viryanam with great potency. Api in spite of. Sargam the creation. Avistritam not extended. Gnatva knowing. Tat that. Hridaye in his heart. Bhuyaha again. Chintayam asa he began to consider. Gaurava pardon me. O son of the Kurus. Translation. O son of the Kurus, when Brahma saw that in spite of the presence of sages of great potency, there was no sufficient increase in population, he seriously began to consider how the population could be increased. Text 51. Ho adbhutam etan me vyapristasyapi nityada nahe nahyedante prajanunam daivam atra vighatakam. Translation. Brahma thought to himself, alas, it is wonderful that in spite of my being scattered all over, there is still insufficient population throughout the universe. There is no other cause for this misfortune but destiny. Text 52. Evam yukta kritas tasya daivam chakke chave kshatas tada kasya rupam abhud dvedha yatkayam abhichakshate. Translation. While he was thus absorbed in contemplation and was observing the supernatural power, two other forms were generated from his body. They are still celebrated as the body of Brahma. Purport. Two bodies came out from the body of Brahma. One had a mustache and the other had swollen breasts. No one can explain the source of their manifestation, and therefore until today they are known as Kayam, or the body of Brahma, with no indication of their relationship as his son or daughter. Text 53. Tabyam rupa vigabhayam mitunam samapad. Translation. The two newly separated bodies united together in a sexual relationship. Text 54. Yastu tatra puman so byun manu svayam muvas svarat stri yasich chatarupakya mahisyasya mahatmanaha. Translation. One of them, the one who had the male form, became known as the Manu named Swayambhuva, and the woman became known as Shatarupa, the queen of the great soul, Manu. Text 55. Tada mituna dharmena prajahyedham babhu vire. Translation. Thereafter, by sex indulgence, they gradually increased generations of population, one after another. Text 56. Sachapi satarupayam panchapatyayan yajit janat priya vratotanupadao tisra kanyas chabharata akutir devahutischa prasutir iti sattama. Translation. O son of Bharata, in due course of time, he, Manu, begot in Shatarupa 5 children, 2 sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapad, and 3 daughters, Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti. And text 57. Akutim ruchaye pradat kardamaya tu madhyamam dakshayadat prasutim cha yata apuritam jagat. Translation: the father Manu handed over his first daughter Akuti to the sage Ruchi, the middle daughter Devahuti to the sage Kardama, and the youngest Prashuti to Daksha. From them, all the world filled with population. Purport: the history of creation of the population of the universe is given herewith. Brahma is the original living creature in the universe, from whom were generated the Manu Swayambhuva and his wife Shatarupa. From Manu, 2 sons and 3 daughters were born, and from them all the population in different planets has sprung up until now. Therefore, Brahma is known as the grandfather of everyone, and the personality of Godhead, being the father of Brahma, is known as the great-grandfather of all living beings. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter, verse 39, as follows. Vayur Yamognir Varuna Sasanka Prajapatis Tvam Prapitat Mahascha Namo Namaste Stu Sahasra Kritva Punascha Bhuyo Pi Namo Namaste. You are the Lord of air, the supreme justice Yama, the fire, and the Lord of rains. You are the moon, and you are the great grandfather. Therefore, I offer you my respectful obeisance, therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you again and again. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Creation of the Kumaras and Others. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Budle Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitanamane Namaste Sarasvate Deva Gauravana Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatya Deshatare Om Jnana Timiranda Sagananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyas Chakrapa Sindhu Biha Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. All right, today we wrapped up this chapter, and the chapter was concerning Lord Brahma's attempt to fill the creation with progeny. So we read about how, in previous chapters, we read about how he was tasked with creation, and how at first he was bewildered and how to create. He tried to figure it out and he couldn't. And then he was inspired by this unembodied voice that was making the sound tapa, tapa, giving him a hint that in order for him to figure out how he was to do what he was to do, he had to engage in some tapasya. So after meditating for some time, the Supreme Lord revealed to him how actually to unfold secondary creation. So he did that. Then, after he unfolded the material realm, he had to fill it with living entities. So this chapter was about how Lord Brahma was attempting to fill the creation with progeny. And as we read in the beginning of the chapter, it didn't quite go the way he wanted it to go at first, right? So the Chatusanas, the 4 Kumaras, they didn't want to waste their time on such things, material endeavors. They were attached to the path of transcendence, right? So they just flat out refused their father's orders. No, we're not going to do that. Sorry. Then Brahma, being frustrated, right, because he's doing his service to Krishna, he's doing his best, and he gets a little angry because he created the 4 Kumaras and he asked them to help out in his service, but they wanted to help out in a different way, Also a much needed way, but they wanted to help out in a different way. So Brahma became angry. And while he was angry, he created Rudra, right? Rudra came from his forehead while he was angry. Rudra, he was more obedient to Brahma. He said, okay, yeah, sure, I'll generate population. But the population that Rudra generated, because he was born out of anger, they were also quite angry and destructive. And so they started devastating the entire universe. Just the freshly built universe, the freshly expanded universe was now being devoured, right? So that caused another problem. Okay, the population's there, but it's not the right kind of population for this particular period of time. They do have their purpose toward the end of creation when everything has to be destroyed and wrapped up and then rebuilt again, but now wasn't quite the time. So Brahma, he was inclined to ask Rudra to go to the forest to perform austerities. So you bring your kids under control, and for now, just go to the forest, right? So it didn't quite go exactly the way Brahma wanted to at first. And of course, when we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, when we spoke about Lord Brahma and the Kumaras, or maybe it was a month ago, honestly, the beginning of the chapter, we talked about how this could have been the first example of trying to engage someone not according to their nature and the dangers of that, right? And so we talked about the first issue, which was the Kumaras. So they weren't inclined to do it to engage in any sort of materialistic activities. But Brahma wanted to engage them to do that because the service needed to be done, right? The population had to increase. But it wasn't their nature. They weren't inclined to do that. So Brahma, he got frustrated, and out of his frustration, Rudra came. And then so Rudra, as we just mentioned, he's willing to do it, but it's also not his nature. So although he's willing to perform the service, he's willing to do the needful, it ends up being a big problem, right? So that the beginning part of this chapter is a really good lesson for us to pay close attention to how we engage others and also how we engage ourselves. Because if we engage ourselves, so how we engage others, that's only going to pertain to those who are in management, right? But it pertains to all of us when we're thinking about how we're engaging ourselves. If we are engaging ourselves in a service that is not in our nature, then it won't go the way that it won't go favorably, it won't go properly. So after this, Brahma, he continued to generate various descendants from various parts of his body. And we saw that depending on his mood, the progeny had corresponding qualities, right? But finally, he was able to fill the world with population, which is what we read today. So what I will say about this is that we can see that when Brahma would revert back to trying to control the process of creation, right? Thinking, okay, this is what I got to do, so I'm going to do it. When he reverted back to trying to be in control of that, it backfired. But whenever he surrendered to destiny, he was able to perform his service successfully. So in today's verses, we saw that he was understanding that, well, there's no other way that this could possibly be happening but destiny. It has to be destiny. The reason why I'm producing all of these living entities, but somehow the progeny is not increasing, it has to be because of destiny. So when he surrendered to that destiny and he was observing it and appreciating that the only cause is Krishna, then in that appreciation of that, appreciating that the only cause is Krishna, then from his body produced these two living entities who successfully filled the creation with progeny, right? So for us, we need to understand that that means that success in our service never depends on our skills or acquired knowledge or material efforts, but it always depends on our sincere surrender to the Supreme Lord. When we understand who we are, who Krishna is, what our relationship is, and we learn how to act according to that relationship in a favorable way, then and only then is the devotional service successful. Until then, it's mixed. It's Mishra Bhakti. It's mixed with whatever other motivations or tendencies or material conditionings that we're putting into it. This is actually a good transition because today is also the disappearance day of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami taught us that the process of bhakti, it has to be, in order for it to be pure, it has to be unmotivated, it has to be uninterrupted, it cannot be tinged with any material desire or mental speculation. And it has to be favorable, right? So Srila Rupa Goswami taught us in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu what pure bhakti looks like, right? So that we can understand how to apply all of the different things that we're learning. So being the disappearance day of Srila Rupa Goswami, I want to talk about him and his various valuable contributions to all of us. Srila Prabhupada said that we, the followers of Srila Prabhupada, are Rupanugas, followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. So not only was Srila Rupa Goswami tasked by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go to Vrindavan and excavate and renovate the holy places where Sri Krishna performed his pastimes, he was also instructed to compile literature to guide aspiring Vaishnavas on the path of pure bhakti. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally instructed Srila Rupa Goswami specifically what to include in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, right? We can read about that interaction in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We see that Lord Chaitanya, he's basically giving him an outline of what to include in that compilation. Srila Rupa Goswami was also very expert in writing plays and poetry. There's also in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we can read descriptions of these different plays and poems that he wrote. Two of the plays that he wrote were Lalita Madhava and Vidagdha Madhava. And when he presented them to the devotees in Jagannath Puri, it was revealed that they were so expertly written. Everything was taken into consideration. There's actually a science behind plays and dramas, right? The way to tap into the audience's emotion and present your story in such a way that everyone in the audience will actually feel it and understand it and appreciate it. And so there are various subtle techniques that are given from the beginning of the play to the end, in which scientifically, which aspects and which forms one is using to bring the play from its introduction to its conclusion in a complete way without missing anything. And all of those subtle points were there in these plays. So everyone was quite impressed with these. Srila Rupa Goswami also was among the few that truly understood Lord Chaitanya's deepest mood. Occasionally, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would go into fits of ecstasy, and sometimes he would say things that seemed irrelevant, seemed gibberish. Like, for example, one time he was in such ecstasy and he was remembering this verse that's talking about the kirtan hall of Lord Jagannath, but his voice was so choked up that all he could say was Jajagagapari Mumu, which is gibberish, but in his mind he's thinking of this verse that's glorifying the talking about the kirtan hall in front of Lord Jagannath. But on another occasion during Rath Yatra, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was reciting what seemed to be some mundane poetry about two lovers who had been separated and then reunited, but were longing for the mood from the past. Because although the two lovers were reunited, there was still something that wasn't quite the same. And although it seemed like a mundane poem, Srila Rupa Goswami understood exactly what Lord Chaitanya was referring to. And so he wrote this verse, which was parallel to what Lord Chaitanya was saying, but in context of Radha Krishna's pastimes. And when Lord Chaitanya found that, so Srila Rupa Goswami wrote that on a palm leaf. And when he went to go bathe in the ocean, he set it on the roof so the ink would dry, so it wouldn't smudge. And so when Lord Chaitanya went to visit, and he saw that poem, and he understood, oh, he understands my heart, and not many people know that. Shroop Damodar, Ramananda Roy are among the few that can understand Lord Chaitanya's deepest mood. It's actually said that Srila Rupa Goswami compiled so many books that no one can count them all. And we have some lists of some of these books, but I would say that we don't have a complete list of all of them. It's also mentioned in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that he described the pastimes of Vrindavan in 100,000 verses, right? So there are some books very esoteric. Most of us aren't ready to read some of these books. Some of our acharyas also would even avoid reading these books prematurely. And so there are examples there about the intimate pastimes that occur in Sri Vrindavan. Our Srila Prabhupada had an unfathomably deep appreciation of Srila Rupa Goswami. When he lived in Vrindavan in the Radha Damodar temple, he would look out his window and he would see the Bhajan Kutir and the Samadhi of Srila Rupa Goswami. And he told his disciples that Srila Rupa Goswami's Samadhis and the other Samadhis there at Radha Damodar temple actually inspired him to go to the West. Of course, we know that he got the instruction from his spiritual master to preach in the West, but gathering inspiration from the Samadhis of these exalted Vaishnavas gave him inspiration to go to the West, because Srila Rupa Goswami was actually the first to get the instruction to go preach in the West, Western India. So Lord Chaitanya, although he was in West Bengal, which sounds like the West, it's actually the easternmost part of India now. There used to be an East Bengal, which is now, I guess, Bangladesh. So West Bengal is actually in the east. Even when India was bigger, it was still in the eastern part of India. And so Lord Chaitanya, after instructing Srila Rupa Goswami, he sent him to preach in the West, the western part of India. So In a similar way, our Srila Prabhupada was encouraged, instructed to go preach in the West, but further west. And so he took inspiration from Srila Rupa Goswami and the other exalted Vaishnavas there to actually go to the West. So all of us, each of us, owe a great debt to Srila Rupa Goswami for providing us with so many authoritative books explaining the process of bhakti so that we can cultivate devotional service properly and avoid the many pitfalls generating from material motivation. At some point, whether it's going to be this life or the next, when we become mature in our devotion, we may be able to appreciate his descriptions of Sri Krishna's sweet Vrindavan pastimes. But all of us can be inspired by his example. In the eyes of society, he was actually an outcast because although he was born in a respectable family, he took up a government position under the Muslim ruler at the time, right? So he was considered to be an outcast at the time. When he heard about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, he started writing letters to him. So he would correspond with Lord Chaitanya before he even met him, just understanding, hearing of him, hearing of his character, and understanding this is the Supreme Lord. He would write. And Lord Chaitanya understood from these letters that this is actually a pure devotee. So Lord Chaitanya went to meet with him while he was still in that government position. He's still serving under Nawab Hussain Shah. And that was when Lord Chaitanya, he wanted to go visit Vrindavan, and he tried to visit Vrindavan a couple of times before he actually got to visit Vrindavan. And so the first time, Lord Nityananda sort of tricked him a little bit. The second time, the devotees were trying to get him to stay in Jagannath Puri because they feared that if he left, maybe he'd never come back. So even the king, Prataparudra, was plotting schemes to try to keep him there. They would say, because the devotees from Bengal would visit Jagannath Puri every year for Rath Yatra. And basically they'd be there almost half the year because they'd go and then they'd stay for Chatur Mas, and then they're walking and they're walking both ways. So basically they're gone from Bengal for like half of the year. So they would encourage Lord Chaitanya. So, okay, but the devotees are coming soon, so you have to at least wait for that. So, for the Rath Yatra, but then they're staying for those 4 months, so you have to stay for that. And then Lord Chaitanya would be ready to go, and then they'd say, oh, but in just a short amount of time, then such and such a festival or such and such an event will be happening, so you have to stay for that, so at least stay for that. So they over and over they were doing this, but Lord Chaitanya was very motivated to go. So even though all of the devotees were trying to get him to stay, he eventually started his trip. And many devotees were going with him, and some he forbade to go along for different reasons, for different services that had to be done. And so with this huge entourage, Lord Chaitanya made his way through the Muslim-ruled states, the territories. And sometimes it was difficult. Sometimes they had to stay at a place for some time until they could establish some sort of relationship with the guards so that they could safely cross certain rivers. But eventually he got to meet Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami while they were engaged in their government service. And Rupa Goswami instructed him, actually, my Lord, please don't go to Vrindavan now with this big group of people. It'll be much better if not so many people are there with you. And so Lord Chaitanya, he took that instruction. He returned to Jagannath Puri, and then later actually successfully made it to Vrindavan. But during that trip, he actually went to this village just to meet Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami, having appreciated their letters and understanding their position as great devotees. So shortly after that meeting, Srila Rupa Goswami left the service of the Muslim government, that position, and he went to meet Lord Chaitanya at Prayag to receive instructions from him. And that also can be read about in great detail in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Rupa Goswami was the head of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And Lord Chaitanya, as I mentioned, entrusted them with the service to renovate the holy places of Vrindavan and to compile authorized literatures to guide aspiring Vaishnavas. So we also have the 6 Goswamis headed by Srila Rupa Goswami to thank for having access to the holy places when we visit the Dham. Prior to the valuable service that they did there, all of those holy places were covered over and forgotten, even though, 4,500 years prior, Krishna was there performing these pastimes. Over time, all of these places sort of got covered over and were forgotten. So we have them to thank for all of the different holy places that we go to when we visit Vrindavan now, and we're able to appreciate and meditate on the pastimes that happen in those precise locations. We have Srila Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis to thank for that. So there are so many things that we have access to because of Srila Rupa Goswami, not just these holy places, but important literatures that teach us proper etiquette, how to associate with devotees favorably, how to rid ourselves from material motives, how to constantly engage in the Lord's service, and so on. So many important lessons that we receive from his books. Without Srila Rupa Goswami and exalted Vaishnavas like him, we would not have access to the many great tools that we have. So we should be grateful for his endeavors. We should follow the instructions that he expertly compiled from the great literatures. And we should follow his example in strictly and enthusiastically adhering to the process of bhakti. We are actually forever in his debt, for we are aspiring Rupanugas. So every day is actually a good day to express our appreciation for him and the other Vaishnavas. But today is especially a good day to honor him the best that we can with our thoughts, words, and actions. So meditate on all that he has done for us. We can speak about him to the other devotees in appreciation, and we can act according to his very valuable instructions. Let's stop here and see if there are questions or comments from the chapter or additional appreciations of Srila Rupa Goswami. Would anyone like to say anything?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
This in the beginning of class, you were saying that, we should understand, we should offer service that is true to our nature. Can you just talk a little bit about how to figure out what our true nature is? I feel we are so we're so caught up in what is, in whatever is our understanding, within our understanding of what is good, what is right. And I'm not sure, I feel I'm a little messed up in understanding what is my true nature.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. That's a tough one. Because when we're learning about how to determine our nature, usually the first tools that we try to determine our nature is Varnashrama, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And it's good to use those as tools because they're given in Shastra. But we also know that we're mixed. We have mixed natures. And so until we're able to actually determine what our prominent nature is in that mix, the way to initially determine our nature and engage it properly is to just observe what it is that we are most attracted to doing, what we'll do automatically. Not that we're attracted to doing it, but we can't. Like some people, they really want to be great singers, but they can't sing a lick. And no matter how much training they get, they just don't have the ear nor they don't have the. So it's not just that what we're attracted to, but what we're automatically engaging in. So those people who are attracted to singing, in other words, they appreciate the science of that particular art form. Maybe they're not going to be singers, but since they have such a great appreciation for it, maybe they will be assistants or production team or whatever. So it's not just that, you might be attracted to something, but you can't do it. So, all right, you don't belong to that field at all. It might mean you just take a different role in that particular field. But our nature is determined by our conditioning, right? Because our pure nature, spirit, soul, doesn't have any of these material conditionings. But the reason we need to engage according to our conditioning is because as we're successfully engaging in Krishna's service, that conditioning dissolves, right? It disappears. And then as we dissolve all of those layers, we come closer and closer to our pure position. So I've given different examples of me personally. I'm going to give a different example this time. I was just thinking of this the other day. Around 2008, I was working in New Jersey, and some of the people I was working with, they introduced me to this game. It's a board game. It's called Settlers of Catan, if anyone knows it. Anyway, I'm a very competitive person, and so when I was introduced to this game, I was very attracted to it. It's a game where you have to use strategy. The strategy always changes because the layout of the board always changes. So although there are principles of the strategy, the details of it are always changing every time you play it. And so I liked it. I liked it so much that within a year from not even knowing the game existed until a year from then, I learned all of the different game modes, and there are a lot of them. I made up my own game modes that are further than what the creators made. I actually made my own board. I carved them out of wood and painted them and all the different pieces. So clearly I was attracted to this thing for whatever reason, right? Because I went from not knowing anything about it at all to, it taking up so much time and energy and effort and all that in my life. So it's something that I was doing naturally. So that means that's my nature. My nature is to understand that thing, become better at it, improve upon it, etc. Right? That's just naturally what I was doing. So when we see that, when we see that there is something that we're putting a whole lot of time and energy into, we understand, okay, that's my nature. That's some aspect of my nature. It's covered and it's being displayed in uh, not the most healthy way, but that's the nature that I'm dealing with. So I have to engage that. So my tendency to strategize and improve and create, those are the things that I understood. Okay, I'll either continue engaging these in a mundane way, or I can engage these in a Krishna conscious way, right? And so that's how we can determine what our nature is, what it is that we're attracted to, and that we're automatically, spontaneously, without anybody telling us, spending time and energy on that thing. So for most people, it's family life, right? Most people are spontaneously attracted to family life. But within that, um, within family, because it's not like all families are the same. Within family life, there are certain aspects of the family life that are more attractive to us. And so we have to understand how to engage those attractive features properly and favorably in Krishna service, right? And so the instructions are there in the Shastra of how to do that. The examples are given by the sadhus, and we always have the benefit of the direct instructions from the spiritual master whenever we're confused or whenever we have some sort of doubts on how to apply what we're reading in Shastra and the examples that we're observing from the sadhus. But that's generally how we determine what our nature is, what it is that we're spending most of our time and energy on. And then the trick is understanding how to transfer the attachment from a material attachment to a spiritual one, right? And the process is there. It's given. Srila Rupa Goswami actually gave it to us. As long as we're following the Shastra, we understand what it is we're attracted to, and then we redirect our appreciation from us being in the center of that appreciation to Krishna being in the center of that appreciation, right? Because everything that we encounter in the material world is made up of nothing but Krishna. And so when it's used properly in his service, then it's actually spiritual. It may still look material, but it's actually spiritual. Um, but whenever we're seeing anything separate from Krishna, and this is said throughout the Shastra, um, when we see things separate from Krishna, that means it's an illusion. That means it's material. I think I had a list of quotes at some point, but I put them in a folder. I don't have them anymore. Yes, but this is the way we determine our nature and determine others' natures too. We see what they're doing. So one very famous way to misunderstand um, or misapply this rule to engage someone according to their nature is Sariputta Prabhu. I think most of us know who Sariputta Prabhu is. A brilliant scientist and mathematician, great devotee. He's no longer with us. But when he first moved into the temple, so he was already a brilliant mathematician when he moved into the temple. And so the temple authorities said, okay, so what are you good at? And he said, well, I'm a mathematician. And so the devotee in charge was like, okay, so you could be our treasurer, because that has to do with math, right? And it was it's a great lesson, by the way, to see that. But it was such a waste of his potential. uh, and we know that now because when he engaged his full potential in Krishna service, we saw how he was able to challenge the so-called scientists who most people just put their blind faith in, and to show scientifically how no, they're actually not right. Um, and that was a much better use of his nature in Krishna's service. So sometimes we kind of get it wrong, but at least it's it's there was some intelligence used there to make him a treasurer. Like I said, it had to do with math. Okay, you're good at math. Need someone to do the books, you know. Uh, but it wasn't a full understanding of nature. So sure, at first, sometimes, we don't know our full nature, so we start engaging it in one way. But then the true nature will always come out if we're observant. Uh, we can't hide it if we try. We do try. We try to hide our nature all the time. We try to make it look like, no, 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 I'm just pure Vaishnava, I dress the part, I speak the part, I look the part, I try to act the part. Um, But we know what our consciousness, what's motivating us. Why do we want to be recognized as a great Vaishnava? What motives are there? What's that? What is that motivation, and how do I actually engage that motivation properly in Krishna service favorably? That's how we determine what our nature is. And so for many of us on the neophyte platform, we are trying to hide that, what our nature is. And that's why it's important to approach the spiritual master, because he knows what our nature is, even if we're trying to avoid it coming to the surface. He knows what it is, so he knows how to engage us accordingly. And eventually we too will be honest with ourselves and understand what our natures are and how to engage. But otherwise, whatever we are attracted to doing, we just need to learn how to do that in the proper consciousness, not I'm doing this because how it makes me feel or because what it provides for me, but I'm doing this because in order to please Krishna, right? Is that okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Prabhu. And like with every other answer you give, it leads to more thinking and more questions. As you were answering, I was just thinking, all of this takes time. Like in the example you gave about Sataputa Prabhu, it took time. So
Yeah.
I feel, you know, and then that also brings me to the point where Brahma says it is destiny. Like,
Mhm.
if this is, sometimes we try to correct a situation, or we try to influence a situation, again forgetting
Yeah.
that
Cool.
but things will happen when they are meant to happen. And whatever it is, whichever way, I mean, I'm not talking about a certain, you know. And also the other thing I was thinking is, it's so much easier to see it in other, you know, in a third person. Seeing
Yeah.
it for, you know, within ourselves, on our own selves, it is and so that brings me to the point of humility. It's and I think that is where the difficulty is when we're not true to ourselves. When we're not true to ourselves, it's because we're not humble. I think, I don't know, I'm just trying to understand. That's probably why we have that difficulty.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes. We don't want we don't we know what our nature is deep down, but we don't want that to be our nature. We want to change. That's why we're aspiring Vaishnavas. But while we're doing that, we don't want others to know how low we really are, right? It's pride. And so we try to hide that nature even from ourselves, from others, but also from ourselves, because it's embarrassing. We're embarrassed by it. But there's really nothing to be embarrassed by, because no matter what level we're on, there's a very clear-cut method to purify that, right? And everyone's here in this material world, so we have all, each of us, made the wrong decision we misused our free will to try our hand at being the center, the controller, the enjoyer. Each of us has done it, so here we are. So I wouldn't say there's nothing to be embarrassed about. There's something to be embarrassed about that we did that, but we shouldn't stop it um, from from we shouldn't stop it from allowing us to actually correct that mistake. And we can, all of us can. No matter how fallen we are, we can correct that mistake by surrendering to Krishna. So yeah, so again, back to the verses. So the Kumaras were there, and when the Kumaras were expanded from Lord Brahma, he was in a proper mood. So they were proper children who wanted to properly pursue transcendence, right? but there was something that needed to be done. So he said, can you create progeny? So instead of saying, okay, you guys are highly intelligent and you're on the path of transcendence, so you can be in charge of instructing those who are also on the path. No, he didn't do that. He said, no, create population. And then he got mad. And then Rudra. So then Rudra, he actually said, okay, yeah, I'll do the needful. You need this service done, I'll do it. And he did it. And then it also turned out bad. So both situations, one not the nature and not doing it, right, created a problem for Brahma. And then also one not being the nature and doing it created an even bigger problem for Brahma, right? But then when he understood what their natures were and he engaged them accordingly, okay, you're going to instruct those people and then you're going to meditate in the forest until you're needed. When he understood that, right, then then he started producing all of these other things, trying to do so in a detached way. And then he realized, okay, it's the population's still not being created. So it's got to be because of Krishna. And then when he surrendered to that, appreciated that, then everything was able to take form. As long as we have our hand on the wheel and we're trying to control it, we're not going to get the proper results because it means we think we're in control. Now, that doesn't mean we give up. It doesn't mean we don't put forth effort. We still have to put forth our best effort, but we have to do it with detachment, right? And that's the biggest lesson that we have. And it's the most counterintuitive thing that we have to learn because generally, when we tell someone to be detached or to keep your hands off something, it means go away. It doesn't mean keep doing it with detachment. We generally either want to put forth our best effort and enjoy the results of it, either enjoy the fruits of the activity or at least get some praise for doing a great job, considering ourselves the doer, or we just want to, sit on a couch all day and do nothing. Not getting credit for it. I don't want to put forth so much effort. So it's counterintuitive to our conditioning. But it is what needs to be done. We have to continue to do our best service, the best way we know how, according to Shastra, with the instructions of the Guru and following examples of the sadhus. Using the best ingredients that are available to us means not endeavoring for things that are out of our grasp, but whatever we have, we should be using it in Krishna's service because everything is made of Krishna. So everything can be used in his service. So whether we have a superior or an inferior product, it can be used in Krishna's service. So we use that. Whatever Krishna is giving us, we use. So that's what we have to master. We have to master seeing everything as Krishna's energy and using it accordingly and not being attached. Anything else? Okay.
Very nice class, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Nice advice you gave. I think we all have to correct ourselves like that. Yeah, not that I know something and I can do something. We cannot do like that. Just Krishna has to give us that idea and everything in our mind. What to do, what not to do. He is our Paramatma and he can guide us. We should have that faith.
And thankfully, we have great Vaishnavas like Srila Rupa Goswami who explain to us how we can actually perceive and how we can understand the difference between Paramatma and real.
Jiva.
Because otherwise we'd be very, very lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for a nice class, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Always wait for your class.
Rupa Goswami ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Let's go.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yeah, I want to say that I like all the verses in the Nectar of Instructions. Very
Great
very
verse.
useful. Yeah, and he has written the songs also, very beautiful songs. I just wanted to say a few words. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for that. Upadeshamrita, one of the most handy books ever. It's short, but there's so much valuable information in there. It's exactly what we need. It's concise and it's complete. Yeah, one of the best tools that we have in our arsenal. We can read that book thousands of times and each time get a deeper understanding of how to behave, how to interact with other Vaishnavas, what things that we should be enthusiastic about, what things to accept and reject. Yeah, that book is
What's the name of the book, Prabhu?
yeah. Well, it's called Upadekshamrita, and Srila Prabhupada, it's translated Upadekshamrita means nectar of instruction.
Oh, the Nectar of
Srila Prabhupada also gave his commentary on each of those verses, nectar of instruction.
Yeah,
Fantastic book.
Fantastic.
very, very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class.